Welcome in, those of you that are here. Anyone that's going to be watching this at a later date, welcome to the Sovereign Man's Collective. And I call it that because this is a place to be curious, to inquire, and to become sovereign for me means as I work with clients and as I sit with myself and observe how much things change, how much we all change in these beautiful ways. And I really do believe that healing is just deeper levels of liberation. And when you become so liberated from your thoughts being true, the past and the future dictating your now moments, then you truly become a sovereign being, meaning that it doesn't matter what's happening out here because you are centered and grounded and liberated from all of those things I just named. So you now become, in some ways, unfuckwithable because you're sovereign, you're free from believing old narratives, stories that kept you small, the things that you came to believe before you knew better. So thank you for arriving here. I invite you to take a moment, if you can, if it's safe, to just step into some slow time, a little bit more stillness. If you can, maybe close your eyes and take a few deep cleansing breaths right here, wherever you are. And just let the dust settle a little bit if you can. Anchor into your breath, inhaling and exhaling with intention. When we bring intention to anything that we do, that's where the magic happens, because the energy of intention is what creates magic, if you will, because everything is energy. So if energy that's positive will guide your reality and the things that come in energetically to align with your intention. So as you set an intention for this time right now that you're sitting here and listening to this discussion, this gathering here, I hope you can set an intention that will be for your highest good, that you will learn or feel something today, and that what I'm speaking to may resonate in beautiful ways for you. So let's dive right in. The topic for today is something that I speak to a lot as I work with one-on-one clients and even couples. This are human. We are humans that are wired for connection, and we long for it. Our sacred needs are to be seen, heard, and understood. And sacred needs don't rest until they're met. And so, as I sit with people and I hear their stories and I see a pattern of across all religions, across any culture, this is universal. It's very personal and very universal, collective. And it's because of our culture, we have we have been given, kind of handed down from generation to generation, shame regarding our longing for connection. So exploring this longing that lives in each of us, we carry this deep, quiet longing to feel connected, to feel met, to feel held in who we are. And it's not even just sexual, it's or romantic, it's simply a human need. Um, so when I do work with couples, it's interesting. They'll come in and want to work on their relationship. And a lot of that is physical as well as emotional, but it always starts emotional. All of our all of our physical somatic body disorders or diseases they begin not in our physical body, because our physical body is very dense. It starts first energetically with our thoughts. And then it is from our thoughts, it becomes our emotions, and our emotions are sending out that signal that creates and draws in. It's the law of manifestation. It's the universal law, the capital T truth, that like energy attracts like energy. So when we are emotionally at a frequency that is calling in the things that we desire without, grasping or needy, we're more of a magnet for what we desire, right? So when I work with people, I'm asking them, if you are seeking emotional connection with other and yet you are disconnected from self, what do you think is happening in reality with your connection with someone else? Are we able to connect deeply with someone else if we haven't done so with ourselves first? That is the question. And because we long for to be seen and heard and understood, nobody showed us how to show up to be seen, heard, and understood. That's part of the problem here. And so there's a lot of shame going on that no one is talking about. And if we're really honest, when we are disconnected from self and we lack that emotional connection, the physical intimacy in partnership becomes some sort of, excuse me, it's not, I don't want to be crude, but really it ends up being mutual masturbation on a lot of levels. When there is a lack of emotional intimacy, the physical intimacy will mirror that of the emotional connection, if that makes sense. So, um, when that connection, that emotional connection gets interrupted, we all just sort of adapt. Some of us go numb, some of us get restless. Our bodies were designed for closeness. And when we are coping for the lack thereof, we turn either inward, or some of us um, beat ourselves up. And there's a lot of shame around that. And it doesn't make us wrong. And none of this is because we're broken, and there's no one really to blame. It's just because we're human and we came here to experience what we're not. We came here to be human, but we're souls having a human experience. So today is about understanding ourselves, our human nature, without any shame. Um, and please remember that our God-given our God-given longing for connection is not something that's bad. It's actually given to us, and shame is actually something that's learned. It's not a divine command to feel shame about what we've been given to be in relationship with. Our our sensual nature, our sexual nature, which is the undercurrent of our emotionality and everything. It's all connected, and there's no shame there. There shouldn't be, but there is, because we are human. So um, some people call this connection deprivation or touch. What is it called? It's called touch hunger. It's the hunger for closeness and the hunger for touch, physical touch, emotional connection. I don't know if any of these resonate with you as I speak them out, but it's the longing to be held, the ache for closeness, the need to feel connected in our bodies, the quiet places in us that crave warmth and presence, the human hunger, the unspoken need for safe contact, and the longing, I think, for a lot of men, and that's why I want to speak to this today, is to be met without fear. If you've ever been shamed for your longing, then there's something there that wants to be held and with curiosity explored in a safe container. And I hope that this container here can be the beginning of safety for you to be able to speak out things that maybe have lived in you, patterns that keep coming up in your connection with self and with others. So and that touch hunger, the connection deprivation, is a human experience. It's not a moral failure. Our nervous systems are wired for this connection. And when it's blocked, we can either go outward with it or turn inward in our adaptations. So the thing I want to speak to, and the adaptations are so normal. They're actually really brilliant. How we innately know every human has a different way that they adapt and cope, and they are survival strategies. So they're innately very brilliant, and they work until they don't work. So to shed light on some of this is what I hope to do today. So many men, we men and women will express our coping at our adaptations in a different way. They both come from the same root wound, which is disconnection, feeling disconnected from self and from divinity, feeling that we should be ashamed about our bodies, our humanity, when that's exactly what we came here to experience. So men in their wound will express unmet touch needs outwardly. Become restless or irritable, or they have cravings, right? That they feel that can't be met. Women express unmet touch needs inwardly. They turn numb, they withdraw, and they shut down. That's a very feminine, wounded thing to do, is to internalize the pain and shut it down and turn it off like a light switch. And men, because of that masculine wound, it wants to be projected out. And we see that a lot in pornography and in the way that sexuality is expressed in our culture. It's explicit, it's loud, it's it's it is not being met with the sacred context that it could be. And I don't want to say should be, because everything exists for a reason, but there's something so lacking there if that's all we have been informed through the culture of pornography and the lack of actual emotional connection, first and foremost. So, and these patterns, the masculine and the feminine wound, are very interesting because they mirror each other, and neither of them are wrong. But they are happening. So let's talk about it. So the cultural and religious conditioning have really, really shaped these patterns, and there's no one to blame. They just really have been handed down from generation to generation. And we inherit these ideas about purity and modesty and bad desire and good restraint, how something is, if this is good, then that is bad, instead of seeing everything on a spectrum as wanting to be centered and balanced, instead of living out on the polarities of the spectrum. So, and none of us really chose these ideas. They were actually handed to us. I like this idea of our parents literally handing us the baton when we were born. Welcome to the human race. Here's your baton for the race that you're going to be taking on as a human being. And what they're giving us in that baton is all the genetics of how we cope, how we survive. And it's handed down from generations, but it's also all the good stuff, all of the resilience, all of the hope that we have, that we pass down to our posterity. So it's neither good or bad, right or wrong. It just is that way. And so we take it on, and when we're more aware of it, we can actually work with it and shape it in new ways that are not formed by old energy of shame. So what was really handed to us is that many men were taught to fear their desires, and many women were taught to fear their bodies, right? Does any of this resonate? If you're listening to this, I would love to hear your comments in the chat. So I get asked this a lot. Well, how do you disrupt this cycle? How do you ever stand in front of this cycle that's been handed down for generations and actually, it's not something to combat, it's actually something to create a relationship with so much compassion. And compassion is the tool, it's the energy and the frequency that disrupts the cycle. The shame and secrets are the two energies that drive addiction, and the craving for something that, if you believe that you should be ashamed of the thing that you're craving, then of course you have to be secretive if you're acting out on that. So can you see how those energies are old? The shame and the secrets, it's an old energy that wants to die. That's why we're finally talking about shame in a new way. And this has been going on for some decades now, but it's finally taking root. I see it as I sit and I speak with men and women and couples. I'm so grateful for the conversations that we're all willing to have now that our parents and grandparents never had the resources or the tools to do. So when men are shamed for needing touch, they shut down or they act out. These are the two, masculine or feminine within a man, right? The shutting down would be a wounded feminine energy living in a man, and acting out is the projection of a masculine wound. When women are shamed for having boundaries or desire, they usually will close down. Sometimes, yes, we can see the same behavior with a wounded, like in a female through the wounded masculine, because we've lived in this culture for so long. We've seen so many women around us acting out in a wounded masculine way, projecting trauma and drama outward, and that is a masculine wound. But shame, in whatever masculine or feminine form it arrives in, it locks both sides in place. It really keeps us stuck. There's a stagnation in the shame and the process of addiction and secrets, right? We all know that. And really, as a society, we have been in any form of addiction. We all carry it. We, as a society, have been treating the effects of addiction rather than the root. Like, why is this person acting out in this way? Yes, we'll deal with the effects of it, but if we always are dealing with the effects, we're never taking care and healing the root wound in and of itself. So that's where compassion comes in. If we're willing to talk about it, we're shining a light on the shadowy thing that no one's discussed, no one's been willing to. There's been too much fear. So with so much love and compassion, we shine a light on the things we've never been willing to talk about or discuss that live in us, that previously we should have been ashamed for talking about or even facing. So it's the compassion that opens up the possibility for healing. So healing begins with naming what is true gently. So we name the hunger. What is it that we're longing for in physical touch, in emotional intimacy? Naming the shutdown. What happens when you feel yourself shut down? Naming the fear, naming the longing, naming the courage it actually takes to shine that light and not distract or numb out from it, but to actually stand with it and create a relationship with it in a new way where healing can actually occur. So, sorry, I have someone doing yard work out there. I don't know if you can hear it right now, but it's kind of loud, but there it is. What do you do? So I have a few questions that I want to bring some curiosity to this. I think curiosity is such a healthy way to stand in front of anything, really. When we're shut down and closed down and think that we are right, that there is, one truth and one way to think or be, we really keep ourselves stagnated by not being open and being curious about ourselves, about others. I really am fascinated by human behavior and human nature. And so I think it's that natural curiosity that lives in me that has led me down this path to even be willing to have this gathering and speak to these things, because I see how much it is. I'm getting feedback now from men and women, and I'm seeing how helpful it is to even just have these discussions. So here we are. The first question is, for you, what did you learn growing up about expressing your need for closeness or touch? Who taught you? What did you see modeled in your family of origin growing up? What was safe? Like, what did you see modeled? Who was it that taught you about closeness and touch? Was it your caregivers? Was it a relationship that you had? What was mocked or dismissed? And what was encouraged? So these are the questions to start asking yourself when you're curious, like, yeah, why do I run from that? Why do I shut down? Why do I numb out? Whatever, or why am I projecting it out? Why am I acting out I mean, the first way to create healing and growth is awareness. Awareness is 90% of healing and growth. The other 10% is motivation. If you are listening to this, you clearly are motivated to grow and to evolve in a way that feels more liberated and sovereign, right? So congratulate yourself for being here and dig into these questions. If you want to write them down and journal and think about, like, wow, I never thought about how my parents modeled closeness and touch. We have these emotional thermostats in our families of origin, where on one side of the spectrum, we could have been raised in a family where it was hot and spicy. It was like 120 degrees at home, but because people were screaming and throwing things and fighting and yelling, and it was very hot. And if that's how you were raised, that became familiar for you. That's your thermostat. Your emotional thermostat can get set either really high, or there's the opposite of that that thermostat, and that would be raised in a family where there was a very cold thermostat, where it was freezing cold, maybe like 30 below, and nobody was talking about their emotions. They were shut down. They actually, if something occurred and there had been any disagreement or fight, the next day everyone was acting like everything was perfect, and they would just shove it under the rug and nobody was talking about anything. That would be considered more of a really cold thermostat. But can you see how these two opposing ways to be, if that's how you were raised, that thermostat became your emotional comfortability, your familiar territory. So if you stepped into a relationship with a partner, and they were raised, nobody's talking about emotional thermostats growing up. Oh, you grew up in a hot and fiery household. You wouldn't understand it because it was normal and familiar. So we can see how dysfunction actually becomes a pattern, a way to be, because simply that it's familiar. It's not new territory. So we stay where it's familiar until we start to rub shoulders and come in contact with a partner who has something, either the same pattern, and now all you do is fight, and that's familiar. So this feels really normal, or just the opposite. You're trying to pursue and get this person to fight with you, and they keep shutting down because they were raised in the cold thermostat, and they will do anything to avoid conflict. It's not normal to them. Can you see how these patterns come up? So the fact that we're even talking about, or being willing to talk about, our need for closeness, our desire for connection, our longing for not just emotional closeness and connection, but physical touch and intimacy as well. These two things go together, and it's a human desire, and it's not something to be ashamed of. So to start asking yourself these questions, like I just did with number one, what did you learn growing up about expressing your need for closeness or touch? Who taught you? What was safe? What was mocked? What was encouraged? That's the first question. And if you have any, if you're new showing up here, I see someone else is new here. Thank you for arriving. But if you have anything to say about what you just heard as we're talking and leaning into this, I would love to hear. If you want to put it in the chat, or if you're brave enough to unmute yourself, whatever that looks like. I'm just going to keep reading through some of these questions. And if you're watching this later and have time, I invite you to, if something resonates, go write it down. When we are journaling, there's a mechanism within us that actually opens up parts of our brain that aren't available to us when we aren't willing to be more still and be contemplative about ourselves and be more self-reflective. So number two question, without telling a story, just in your body, what does touch hunger, we talked about this, like connection deprivation, what does that feel like in your body? Not emotionally. I just want you to be able to tune in. And sometimes this is harder for men than women, to actually be still enough to understand what their emotions are trying to teach them in their body. It may feel like, it may present as tightness, somewhere in your body, a restlessness, even perhaps a numbness. And the biggest one of all that I see as I work with clients is loneliness. And that becomes a lot of times disguised as anger. So, does any of that resonate as I read this? Like, you're longing when it must be shut down, or you're taught to be ashamed of it. How does it present in your body? What is your body speaking to you about your human need for closeness and connection?
I
Okay,
know for
number,
me,
okay,
for
thank
me,
you. Yeah.
yeah, so one of my love languages is touch,
Mhm.
and I don't have an intimate partner. So it does, I think for me, it does physically feel like an emptiness, loneliness. And then when I do, like, even something as simple as holding hands is uh, I guess the only way of describing it would be a fullness or almost like a tingling sensation.
A fullness. When you finally feel that touch, you
Mm-hmm.
notice there's a relief, literally, right? At least that's what I kind of, if I heard you
Right,
right, that you're saying that there is actually a physical sense of relief when you're able to be touched. As
right,
simple as holding someone's hand. Yes, yes. I mean, all the studies that show um, that they're able to research and see how humans hugging each other literally creates the dopamine, the endorphins, and things that we actually need for joy and to feel the higher resonating frequencies of emotion. They come online when we are being physically touched. And so there is that, it's a human need that. And so you weren't here before, JP. I know you are busy. I see that you're there at work, but thank you for arriving here. I so appreciate this. um, what I was speaking to before was this touch hunger or connection deprivation that lives in every human, and how the masculine, it's the female has a different way to express that need by shutting down. They're internalize it and kind of shut down and numb out, and their whole body shuts down, numbs out. Their whole sexuality and sensuality shuts down. And for men, they can shut down inwardly, but a masculine wound is more to project it out. And neither of these is wrong. They're actually mirror each other. And when we can become more aware of what's actually going on, because we've been raised in an overculture, whether it's religious or not, of having a lot of shame handed to us generation after generation around um, that those private things stay private, that they're not to be talked about. And when we aren't talking about it or even acknowledging it, we are missing out on the opportunity to have a relationship with the essence of ourselves. So when we're like really disconnected from ourselves, because that's what's actually what's happening when we're disconnected from the essence of ourselves, we are disconnected from self. How, if the very thing that we long for and are wired for is now, it seems so far away and impossible because we're disconnected here, how are we thinking that we're going to show up in connection, in deep, in like meaningful emotional connection with other? And that's what we want to bridge now through these conversations, is as we do the work of healing and becoming sovereign, it's actually having compassion for the shame that has lived in us for generations, and bringing conversation, shining a light on it with so much love that it changes the narrative and creates a bridge between the essence of us and ourselves. Now it changes the energy of how we're showing up in relationship with anyone else. everything else because we
Yeah.
did it here first. So these questions are questions that our ancestors were never asking themselves. No one was asking them, where do you feel it in your body when you're shutting everything down? It's, you're like, it's a tingling when I actually feel the connection. And what did you say before? How did you describe the lack thereof?
A loneliness, just a lacking of
Hmm.
fullness, right? I think that
Okay.
love is one of the only words that is a noun, it's a verb, it's a description, it's a descriptive word, right?
Yeah.
So um, I think that when you express and you communicate, you obviously can build relationships and develop a fullness and a love for oneself and whoever you're discussing or talking with, especially when you're discussing intimate, deep matters. But when you use that different sense of touch, it heightens that understanding um, of what love is. It's just adding another sense to that equation.
Exactly. Okay, thank you just for speaking to this because I want to say something. You said a lacking of fullness, that loneliness, and I would call that longing. Like
Yeah.
we all have a lot deep, it's wired into our meat sock, right? This body, this one instrument we've been given was actually wired, deeply wired with longing for that connection, or we wouldn't be feeling the loneliness and that longing. It's sacred. So
Mm.
when we can turn toward it as a sacred thing, not something to be ashamed of, but like, oh my gosh, this was wired into me, created into my nervous system. My whole nervous system is regulated when I feel safe to be touched and to touch without any shame, not good, bad, right, or wrong. And there's a whole context and conversation around that. But if we, as these humans who have this deep sacred longing to connect emotionally first, it's that emotional connection. You weren't here when I was speaking to, if anything presents or manifests physically, somatically, it first had to be thought. So it starts as the energetic, fine energies of thought create emotions, which are energy in motion. And as we continue this cycle, it becomes rooted energetically in our bodies as dis-ease, disorder, as chaos
Mm.
of thought if it's based in fear and shame. So how do we heal what already lives here? Because it lives here. I mean, look what's happening. It's living here and there's no shame about it and there's no one to blame. It just is. So as we turn in with a lot of love and curiosity, we start to create the bridge that first here, right? And then in connection with others. So now when we have that emotional intimacy, the sexual piece of it isn't just mutual masturbation anymore, and literally is an extension of what started here emotionally in physical form now. So you see how it mirrors on all these different layers, how when our thoughts are soft and they're compassionate, it brings online the capacity to hold and heal that which has been shamed. And as we give that to ourselves, now we can go out and actually connect with others in ways that, and you said it's layers and layers because we're multidimensional, we're limitless creative beings. When we believe that we deserve connection and we stop longing for it but we start giving it to ourselves, then it will naturally start to express outward. But it must happen in a feminine yin way. So instead of the wounded feminine turning in and shutting down and numbing out, she's turning in now, male and female, because it lives in both, in all men and women, this equal masculine feminine wounding that wants to um shift and become more conscious, right? when we're giving it here and receiving it from ourselves, it's healing all the wound. The masculine and the feminine way that we express is now being met with compassion. And now it can't help but express outward with that same compassion consciously. So that's a masculine expression of what started feminine. So the yin life force energy is what created everything first and foremost, right? It's
Yep.
dark, it's yin. And from that true longing to express itself comes the masculine conscious yang energy from a true conscious yin, slowing down, the darkening, the holding, the gestating, gives birth to a conscious masculine expression. So now you can see that as we actually turn in and tune in and with compassion, stop shaming ourselves, it starts to change it. What does that look like? Well, it's having conversations like this. It's asking yourself the questions like, where do I feel the pressure in my body? Like nobody's been doing that really.
Accept call.
Hello.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead here with question 3. So where do you feel the pressure to be fine even when you're not? So who taught you to hide your longing, to hide your need? And what did you fear would happen if you didn't? What would have happened in your life if you didn't feel the need to be ashamed of having a longing or desire for connection, both emotionally and physically? The 4th question, what would it even look like for you to be met with compassion instead of shame? Can you even imagine what that might be like? And what actually would feel safe? Because we are all on our own path. There are as many paths as there are people. And it's so fascinating to me to sit with people and see the different layers that they go to in the depth of connection with self and other as they start their journey of being more self-reflective and curious rather than ashamed. And it and safety, I'm speaking in the context right now of safety, even like you don't know what you don't know. You think you're safe in partnership or with other, or even with yourself. And then when you start to experience safety, you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was safe at a certain point. I didn't know what safety really was. No wonder I was so shut down. But we assign and honor safety, thinking that a partner is the one who's bringing it forward for us. Like, oh, I feel so safe with you. I can open up. But really, just like everything else, where did safety begin? It starts here. Yes, we can't feel safe in relationship with other until we have felt safe with self. And that safety begins by being willing to bring compassion to all the things that have previously felt like shadowy and ashamed and not willing to like rear their ugly head for fear of being judged. That's not safe.
I think what happens when you're relying on others for that happiness or that feeling of acceptance and love, and then at some point they let you down, that generates not just resentment but also cynicism that you know you get to a point where you can't trust another person. Like they're gonna let me down too. But if it comes from within and you love yourself first, I think what I'm hearing is you're going to naturally attract others who share that same feeling and belief.
Thank you. Perfect. So beautifully stated. I think everyone could understand that who's listening to this now or later, that when you have given enough safety, you realize, oh, I'm not clinging anymore. My old need to be needed doesn't exist here anymore because I know that I show up for myself. I'm safe here to navigate all of the things that feel chaotic or messy or sticky or shameful. I'm gonna sit with that And that literally shifts your energy to one of safety, right? Like,
Mm.
I'm safe. I can trust myself to be safe with whatever feeling or shame I feel, and I'm not going to abandon myself. That's the safety. When we self abandon subconsciously, there's there's patterns playing out that we aren't aware of, and that creates a sort of energetic, it's a signal. It's the signal that we're sending out subconsciously from lack and need and shame. And what since we know the universal law, the capital T truth of the universe is that like energy always has to attract like energy. So what's coming into your field of reality will always be your best guide for what you're thinking. Oh my gosh, if this is what I'm attracting, how can I be more compassionate with my subconscious thoughts and be clear, like, what must I believe below what I'm aware of that keeps manifesting this sort of unsafe um, experience? And that is a beautiful thing. That's not something to be ashamed of. That right there is life saying you're still not free. If you still believe that you should be ashamed of ABC or whatever it is, your thoughts, all these things. No, how can I sit with my humanity with so much grace and hold that version of me that ever came to believe I should be ashamed to have longing? Now it starts to change. Can you see energetically? There's more relief in your body. It's that tingling, it's the holding the hand. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, holding someone else's hand is really lovely. But can you imagine holding your own hand in a way, like metaphorically, that you are safe? I've got me. My loneliness has shaped who I am because now I no longer need to be needed by someone else or anything outside of me. And now the signal that goes out consciously and subconsciously is one of, I am a sovereign being that is safe to trust myself. And what that calls in is someone who is very clear, who is matched to the energy of your safety. And what they're mirroring back to you now is you. Clearly, there's not projection so much. There's not the judgment. As you stop judging yourself, guess what? You're not judging other people. And so people are coming and going, and you're not clinging. And there's so much love in that and so much growth and evolution because it's in the flow of who we actually are, which is sovereign, abundant, unconditionally loved and loving beings. So I want to shift this just a little bit. And if you're willing to do this with me, JP, I'm going to go there. This is a loaded question. I don't know if you want to answer or not. You can just say, I'm going to pass because there's other questions. But what do you wish, and anyone listening to this later, any men, because this is for the men, what do you wish women understood about your lived experience? And you will have a personal question, I mean, a personal experience with that. But I'm curious if this probably echoes many, many men's lived experience with women, whether it's a romantic partner or a friend or a sibling or a mother, aunt, whatever. As your experience with women, what do you wish that women understood? Maybe just not even about your experience, but about the male experience
Wow,
in regards to this.
that's
Yeah,
it.
it's a very loaded question.
Um, I mean, I think, without getting granular, just generally speaking, I think men, assume this role of protector, provider, feeder, hunter, gatherer, and as that, as we assume those roles, emotions have to take a backseat. Our ability to, uh, you know, have a weakness takes a backseat. we forge forward in spite of um, our weaknesses, our feelings, our emotions. Um, you traverse life and you reach milestones that to others would probably be celebrated, but to you, that's an expectation. And
Mm.
so instead of celebrating that, you move to the next expectation, which again should be something that is celebrated, but instead is something I expect of myself. Therefore, it's not that big of a deal.
Mm.
So I think that understanding that, not just for as a female, but also as a male, like when we when we set goals for ourselves and we pursue those goals and we reach these milestones, big or small, once you reach them, it's important to celebrate those and to not just go through life like with this massive checklist. All right, I did this. Now I've got to do this. Now I've got to do this. Um, Taking the time to look around and enjoy the journey, not just the end point, because it's like one end point to the next end point.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot, once you get granular, um, there's a lot of, you can talk about people pleasing and, shame when you don't measure up to those milestones or those touch points that you are expected to reach, not only for yourself, but that other people expect of you. Being able to
Yeah.
celebrate yourself in spite of, maybe embarking on a different path.
That's
I don't know if that
beautiful.
makes sense.
Oh, it does. It does because it on so many levels it makes sense because we've known each other for some time, and so I kind of understand what you're speaking to in your context. So this this idea, and there's so many that do it, right? This it's a wounded masculine because it's a projection out onto life that came from our childhood, that we came to believe that in order to have value that I must perform to
Mm-hmm.
this level, whatever that looks like, on all the ways that we do this. But your story was, I mean, the success that you've garnered, but behind that, you're like, well, uh, this was just expected. Like, but can I see how far I've actually come in success? And at, is there a cost? Like, I see you kind of stepping back now and getting more granular about, like, oh, so what does that even mean in the context of, like, is this all we're doing? Just like performing for what? What is the purpose? And behind the curtain, what is the cost of performance
Right.
for things that actually are really amazing, but they're just so expected that no one was really talking about, like, really, this is as good as it gets. So
Well, I
I've
think that
achieved all of this.
behind the curtain, that the cost invokes shame. So if people
Okay.
know the cost, then it almost undervalues, these milestones that you reach.
Yeah.
So it takes the
Okay.
humanity out of
Yeah.
these goals or these aspirations and these these touch points. So um, I think for me, I guess I don't worry so much about what a woman or a man necessarily thinks of me. It's more like, okay, what have I accomplished? What has occurred, both positive and negative, as a result of that?
Mhm.
And then taking a step back and seeing the whole picture. And, you know, accepting the whole picture,
Mm.
not, you know, not picking and choosing. Oh, I like this part. No, I'm going to throw that away. It's all part of
Yeah,
my story.
yeah.
And it's all a byproduct of me going from one point to the next, these expectations that I had set for myself to be better, to
Mm.
earn the love and respect of others that I felt like I needed to earn.
Okay. Thank you. Because underneath all of that, and we have talked about this at a different occasion, maybe on one of our last things, but this idea that really everyone's a walking confession. They are showing, we show by our actions, not our words. We can talk a lot, but our actions always speak louder than our words. People are confessing to us all the time what they value. What do they believe to be of value? They will just watch what anyone values. They will be giving their energy to that. Where our attention goes, our energy flows. Your energy was flowing to these milestones, these things, these touch points, these anchor points in your life where you're like, well, I achieved this, I achieved this. But behind the curtain, what you valued, because we're so wired for it, we all don't understand how to make those emotional connections, because there's walls of success all around us and it creates a heart wall. Like, you are the professional, you're the doctor, you're the, like, you are the guy who knows it all, you have all the answers and the money or whatever that looks like, whatever you've created. But then you're like, behind the curtain there is loneliness. How can I show up as human when I've been put on a pedestal by everyone around me? But in some ways, you were taught to put yourself on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this, it's this paradox of life that, oh my gosh, what is it that I actually value that I'm giving my attention to without, like, unwittingly, maybe? Because what I really long for is to be human and to make human connections and not be on a pedestal of people thinking that I need to be a certain way to receive love or to be loved or to be just accepted just for being human. I don't know. So it's such a rich territory there to say,
Yes.
what have we created in our lives, and all around us is happening, and what we're really missing out, and I think is uh, the the pathway to healing and change in our society collectively. It starts with each one of us turning in and giving compassion to the versions of us that came to believe we needed to perform, to be loved or to be seen, to be held, like our sacred needs to be met by performance rather than just being authentically human, like showing up. So
So
we
I
see
just want to
people,
add that
yeah.
I think the moment that I started my healing, and when I say my healing, I mean he, learning to love myself, was when I started to uh, engage in self-care. And when I first heard the term self-care, I'm like, it didn't make much sense to me. You know, what is self-care? Well, I've I've come to learn that self-care is this, me taking time from that to get on to, you know, this meeting. That's me putting myself above anything else. And that's showing myself love, compassion, and attending to my own needs above the needs of others. Now,
Mm.
some may call that selfish. I don't, because it makes me a better person who can show up for other people in a much healthier, much more genuine manner.
So my question for you is, thank you for saying that and speaking to this, because this is the crux, the foundation of any healing work. When couples come in and they were like, pointing at each other, I'm like, I'm just going to say this, that if you came here thinking you're going to change the other, um, you're in kind of for a rude awakening if you think that that's the way that it's going to happen. The minute you start to do your own inner work, I promise you things will shift and change in your coupleship, your lovership, on all the levels, because you started it here first. So I love that you said that. And the energy of selfishness, whatever anyone's going to call it, literally changes how you show up with everyone else. It's like an experiment. Go ahead and try it. The more you're loving on you, I promise you're going to make it's so much easier to love on everyone else because it's energy. Everything is
Yes.
energy. It starts with the energy of compassion. When you start to bring those finer, refined energies, shame, okay, so death is everything is energy. Death resonates at 0 hertz, right? It's zero. There's no more energy flowing through this instrument. The next up um, in frequency from death is shame at 20 hertz.
Mm.
Shame resonates so heavily, it's just above death. Think of how heavy and gross and clunky that energy is trying to move through our dense bodies. That's why it feels so gross and we'll do anything but feel it. That's why we're shutting down, we're numbing out, we're projecting it out, anything but feel that
Feel
shit.
that shit.
So, you saying the minute I started to be selfish, if everyone's watching, I don't care. My sacred needs are to be seen, heard, and understood. And I'm going to stop outsourcing that need to other people, to other accomplishments, to all the touch points that were expected of me. No, like I see the younger generation doing this earlier than us. And I'm so grateful because I'm like, what a beautiful world collectively and personally this is going to be for everyone when they start to realize that the one person that they've been waiting for their whole lives to show up and change it and make it better is right here. Like
Mm-hmm.
what a gift to understand at a young age that the only person who can never leave you is you. So why not create an alliance with them and start to resonate at the frequency of their wholeness? They're there. They're living there right now in the frequency of their wholeness. We all are. How do we tap into that? Well, it's compassion and
I
love.
hate to bow out, but
You
I
have to go.
appreciate you.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for showing up, JP. So appreciated. Thank you. Okay. So we are at time. It's been an hour. And I have other questions, but I think I'm going to save those for next time because they go deeper into um, asking questions about the women in your lives. And this is for the men. And it's interesting because I haven't really breached this subject with the women yet. And I am curious to do that in our next gathering with the women. But I'm so appreciative of JP. I'm wondering, and I'm curious if this discussion has resonated with any of you watching this at a later time, or even those that are here. I don't know if you're available to put it in the chat or open up or not. But what I do want to, just as we close here, um, just I want to name something simple and true, that every man carries a story of connection, of where it was offered, of where it was withheld, and where the body still remembers what it longed for. Most men have never been given a place to speak about the quiet longing or ache inside, the places that crave warmth and presence, the longing to be held without judgment or fear. And yes, it starts here, that ability to not self-abandon, to not stay on the pedestal that people maybe put you on, but to be human and authentic and say, hey, I long for connection, and actually show up in vulnerability. It takes so much courage to do that. Brene Brown speaks so beautifully and eloquently to this, the idea of shame and vulnerability, and how important and vital it is as humans to be vulnerable, to have the courage to speak our truth, um, and to be seen, right? If our sacred needs are to be seen, heard, and understood, what are we missing out on when we believe that it's safer to stay hidden, right? So today wasn't really about fixing anything or arriving anywhere. It's just about honoring our humanity, our need for closeness, to feel safe and to be met. If something shifted in you or opened up, even just a little, that is enough. Maybe you leave knowing there is nothing wrong with your longing. It's actually sacred and it's wired into us. It's simply a part of you that's still alive. It's still seeking. and it's still worthy of connection. So turn towards that part of you and love on him. Give him the attention that he actually longs for, and see what happens starts to shift in your own relationships with others and all of life. When you give compassion here, it can't help but flow naturally out into every connection and relationship that you have in this life. So thank you for being here. I am honored to do this work. I do it for free. In the new year, I'm thinking about starting a subscription or something, um, because I think that will bring more, I don't know, validity to what I speak to, having it not be so free. But I love what I do, and I love having these discussions, and I love that there are men that are actually interested and have a desire to um, do the most beautiful work of all, and it's self-compassion. So thank you. Namaste. And I hope to see you here next time.